Welcome back to The Price of Business. You know that song. You know that noise there. That noise means that Chris Corso is in the house. And he's with the Corso Law Group. And we're always delighted to have him on the program. CorsoLawGroup.com, offices in Arizona and in the Houston area. And we had some best of you last month, but we didn't see you. We're glad to see you back again.
I'm glad to be here, Kevin. Thank you. As
you were
always.
missed.
Yeah, I missed being here.
Yeah.
You know?
So, we get great feedback. People like your style. They like your persona, and they like your topics. And people like the fact you and I geek out a little bit when you're here.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun. It is. You have to laugh a little bit with some of this, or
Yeah,
else.
it's an interesting evolution for me because I'm a old school three-legged stool conservative historically, but there's an old saying that's become one of my there's this old saying that I've created a I guess you could say an amendment to or addendum to. The old saying is what is a conservative but a liberal that's been mugged?
Right.
And I say, hey, what is a libertarian but a conservative who's figured out who's been doing the mugging? And
right.
A lot of it has to do with government. And so it's bizarre today to kind of have some of the positions I have today. But, when you look at the realities and you look at the dangerous and scary culture that we live in, and so much of that is driven by government, not by what we consider criminal, although what I think a lot of what government does is criminal.
I think you're right. And, especially talking about what's coming up and the choices that we have in front of us right now. And so you start to really think about what's happening out there and, what's the driving force here, Yeah,
I get chills up and down my body, but it's the kind you get at a horror movie. You're not the one that's seeing your hero.
Not the good kind. Yeah, not the good kind.
So a big story over the summer was the fact that it appears pretty obvious that the Democratic Party was in collusion with the person that had inherited the seat. It was her turn. A lot of people argued it was her turn back in 2008, and it was stolen by, an upstart candidate from, Illinois. It's certainly time for her to have her reign, if you will, as Donald Trump would refer to it.
Yeah, exactly.
I never understand why people aren't alarmed by that use of the term reign.
Yeah. There's so many other more alarming things. But
it's crazy, but talk to me about that. So talk a little bit. First of all, provide some context for us.
Well, I mean, we're talking about these emails, that were leaked from the Democratic National Committee, and talking about a lot of these. We're talking about campaign funding and just tactics and things that the committee was using and who they were communicating with. In order to special interest groups and things like that, that revealed a lot of back and forth between those kind of groups and strategies about campaign fundraising and things like that. And then there were some things that came out against or would be considered against one of the candidates,
Bernie.
Bernie, yeah. But at some point they said, well, this was when Hillary probably had it all locked up, by then. But we don't know that for sure. But some of the information that was coming out really would put a damper on his campaign and boost some of what Hillary was doing. It appeared anyway from this, and so they wanted to talk about, well, can there be legal repercussions in what was happening in some of these emails? And these are stories coming from the New York Times that are revealing this kind of thing, and the emails that talk about exchanges to harvest hundreds of millions of dollars from wealthy donors and things like that. So
wow,
yeah.
So that's some serious collusion.
Yeah.
I know historically the party was never supposed to talk about any candidates except for in the most neutral context until after the formal nomination.
Right.
That's what's always been historical precedent.
That's right, always. And now, then this is why this has become, such a big story right now, or a month ago or so on, because how much of this happens always, all the time, and we don't know. It's just I think that this particular election, there just seems to be so much controversy surrounding everything right. They're saying and everything they're doing and just the candidates in general. But this particular item, I mean, this is pretty alarming. some of the things they're saying have come out, especially as it relates to campaign, financing and fundraising,
Right.
things like that, and interest groups that are being revealed in these emails that maybe didn't want to.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's another perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah,
WikiLeaks did no favors to the DNC on this, although it did to a lot of members of that party who felt like they were robbed, and clearly it's pointing to that. What do you think? I mean, realistically, as far as legal ramifications?
It's difficult because they say, well, according to the Department of Justice guidebook, for the federal prosecution of these election offenses, they say they don't really fall under these. There's 4 types, election fraud, patronage crimes, campaign financing crimes, and civil rights crimes. And they say, well, these don't really fall under those headings or those guidelines. Conveniently, I think they're trying to just distance themselves as far as they can from this, But in my opinion, I think that I'm not sure. I mean, election fraud, I don't see why this doesn't relate to that. I mean, if they're coming down on one side or they're releasing information that will hurt Bernie's campaign, regardless of where they are in the campaign, well, to me, that can fall under some fraud. Now you say, well, the committee, how can the committee themselves commit fraud? Well, individuals from that committee leaked this. Information about financing, about what interest groups that are there, people that provide millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to these campaigns, information about them and tactics used to gain their, even talking about seating arrangements and seating shots at fundraisers. Well, to me, that comes into campaign financing crime. So I think that there are some things that can be explored here, and they may.
The thing that's interesting that you said, and it just shows you, they need Captain Obvious in charge of the investigation.
Right.
Because Captain Obvious would say, hey, wait a minute. So if it was too late for Bernie Sanders, why do it at all?
Right.
Why do this corrupt collusion at all if it were too late? It was like the only reason why they would do it is because there was some potential, at least, that Bernie could figure out how to win this bill. So to me, it just reeks of lie, if you will.
It does. It's sort of like saying, well, you know what, this person was on their deathbed and I shot them,
right? So
I shouldn't really be charged with committing a homicide because they were already, it's that kind of thought process. Well, okay, the election was locked up. It doesn't really matter. I mean, these things were happening.
Yes.
And in my opinion, so. I think it has to be explored. I think that if the Department of Justice, I think it would be irresponsible not to look into this further and see if this falls. I think it does fall under at least 2 of these.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
But
who they want? Do they want to
rock? They're not calling you or me, buddy. That's for sure.
No, I know.
So, a lot of this, though, I get concerned about a culture, a political and governmental culture, because you've talked often on this program about how our email is anything but safe now, thanks to the government. When a government does this kind of thing, and is very cavalier about it, to me it creates a culture where why wouldn't this kind of thing happen?
Right. I mean, and that's the problem. We always say this. We talk about, well, we're used to it. We this is something we just accept as people, that this is everybody's into our business and so on. And then when you see something like this, it just, like you say, it lends itself to say, well, hey, that's just more of the same, not a big deal, but it is. I mean, so it all rings true. It all comes around. You could say, well, people look at this situation and say, well, that's so far away from my backyard that, it's not on my radar. What do I care? You know, but it's the same thing when it relates to them individually and their cell phones tapped into all the things we talked about. Then it's something that really hits home. But I mean, I think it's a problem across the board,
Chris Corso, he's a phenomenal attorney. We're delighted to have him on the program. He's the guy you need in your corner when you're dealing with the government, you're dealing with issues, particularly of a criminal nature. You need to call him and learn more about it. CorsoLawGroup.com. CorsoLawGroup.com. So glad to see you again.
You too, Kevin.
Look
Thank
forward
you.
to having you back in the studio again.
I do too. Thank
All
you.
right. When we come back, we're going to have more for you. I do want to remind you the show continues 24/7 at priceofbusiness.com. More for you after this.
Hi, I am Ross Powell of Survival401k.com. When society collapses, food and water scarcity becomes real, travel is restricted, and people become violent and mean, then it's too late. Many folks today only have resources last them a few days. This doesn't have to be you. Time is urgent, and Survival 401k is here to help you prepare now. To get your retirement funds, to purchase metals, prepping supplies, and the like, call us today for a free 30-minute consultation by visiting Survival401k.com. Survival is your only option.
This is not an offering to sell a franchise. Franchise offerings are made through the franchise disclosure document. Ask for details. For a unique business opportunity with a leader in the $34.5 billion quick casual restaurant segment, consider Tropical Smoothie Cafe. They offer healthier alternatives to fast food with innovative sandwiches, wraps, smoothies, and more, fueling double-digit system-wide sales growth. Tropical Smoothie Cafes are opening every week, so don't wait. See for yourself at their Richmond location and call 1-800-239-1889 to learn more. That's 1-800-239